Every year between September and February, over 64% of Americans will spend their Sundays, Monday nights, and sometimes Thursdays participating in an NFL game. They may be fans, players, coaches, or employed in one of the many other jobs that have been created as a result of the NFL. Each game is a major event, and these happen across the country on a weekly basis, creating employment and entertainment for millions. None of this would happen if it weren't for the vision of a man named George Halas. George Halas was a very athletic young man, who played on the New York Yankees for a very short period of time. In 1920, he was on the semi-professional football team, the Decatur Staleys, which became one of the inaugural teams of the Professional Football League, which later became the NFL. On September 17, 1920, there was a meeting held in an automobile shop in Canton, Ohio. The men in attendance had a purpose of professionalizing the sport of American football.
Yes, this meeting in Canton on September 17th was held in the Hupmobile showroom in his automobile agency. And of course, there weren't enough chairs for everybody, so we sat around on the running boards of the Hupmobile cars. And in order to join this group, you had to put up $100 for a franchise. I think it's worth a little more than that now. But there was never a doubt as to what type of game we had, because when I was graduating from the University of Illinois, Coach Bob Zupke said, "Just when you fellas get to know something about football, I lose you." And when I played semi-pro football in 1919, I knew a lot more than I did while I was in college. So I never had a doubt about the great game that was to be.
This meeting is now legendary and credited with forming what is now the National Football League. When given control of the Decatur Staleys, George Halas thought the team would bring in more money and then moved the team to Chicago. The team did move to Chicago, thanks to Halas. The Chicago Cubs allowed the football team to play at Wrigley Field, so Halas decided to thank them by naming the team after the Cubs, the Chicago Bears. For a period of time, George Halas was both a player and coach of the Bears.
George, when I met him, was his own press agent for the Bears. He did his own coaching. He played right end. He signed the players. He did his own scouting. He ran the concessions. He was the guy that looked out for the police and everything at Wrigley Field. He was a one-man gang. There would be no football league today had it not been for George Halas. There's no doubt about it.
When Halas did stop playing, he would still get involved in the game. He would run out and yell at the referees or throw stuff on the ground and stomp on it in anger. Sometimes if he got the chance, he would even kick a player on the opposing team. Halas would sell seats on the opposing team's bench to fans just so they would annoy the players.
The thing that really annoyed me as a competitor when you went to Wrigley Field was that Halas actually sells seats on our bench to patrons of the Bears, and the rope would be right behind you, and the fans would be standing directly behind you with the obscenities in your ear while you're trying to hear what's going on and play a football game. So it was a terrible place to play.
There was one little red-headed son of a bugger up in the behind the ivy fence, and he used to get on me something terrible. You know, "Hey, fatso, when are you gonna retire? You're an old man." I said, "I'll get you, you little red-headed son of a bugger," you know.
Halas would do things like that. He had a dog on the sideline that near the close of a game that if he needed a timeout, he had a dog trained to run on the field. It was a little black and white dog.
George Halas changed not only America by his instrumental role in creating the NFL, but he also changed the job of coaching football.
Moving forward. He was the first pro coach to hold practice sessions every day, the first to hire a full-time staff, and the first to use films to analyze an opponent.
George Halas spent his life coaching the Bears and building the franchise that it became. In the process, he established much of what is taken for granted today. As a businessman, he led the NFL into the television era. Because this was handled carefully and made a success, it secured the future for the league, which before had been questionable. Halas's role in creating the NFL and televising games is significant. In 2010, the top watched 15 shows on the year consisted of 14 NFL games. Also, the Super Bowl is the most popular event in American culture. This year, one 30-second commercial during the Super Bowl will cost $4 million. I could go on and on about the scope of the NFL today. With all of the jobs created, all of the money spent both directly and indirectly on the NFL-related games and activities, activities, the NFL has a major impact on today's economy. Without the vision of George Halas, none of this time or money would be being spent on the NFL today. Many people don't realize it, but George Halas is affecting America's culture and economy.
He's a very, very warm person. And you can't help but like George Halas. I love George Halas.
He left his love in the men he touched. He left his spirit in the game he loved.
Just being a part of the growth of the National Football League, that to me is the greatest thrill or event in my life.